Good Erev Shabbos, everyone. Good Chodesh. Chodesh Kislev. Today is the Rebbe's Yom Tiv. The Rebbe came home from after suffering his heart attack in 1977, Tavshin Lamed Ches. And the month of Kislev, the month of miracles, the Chassidish month, all the Yom Tovim starting from today, Yud Tes Kislev, Chanukah, Yudalit Kislev. So this is a tremendous month, and this is a tremendous parsha. It's a very pivotal parsha, like we spoke many times, about connecting Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. This is really the parsha about the story of Yitzchak, and really one of the stars of this week's parsha is Rivkah. And I want to just touch on an idea that we spoke about in this week's parsha class, that we find something very interesting, that Avram Avinu, when he starts his, so to say, the journey that we know of his life, Hashem tells him, Lech Lecha. He has to leave Haran, he has to leave what he left already, or Kazdim, and go to Eretz Canaan. And then the simple explanation is that he's going away from something Tuma, something, the house of idol worship, to the land, Eretz Shareka. He's elevating upwards. And then at the end of this week's parasha, we find that Yaakov goes right back where Avram left. He goes back, he leaves the land, and goes back to Haran. And we know the name Haran it means Haran Af, the place of anger, the anger of the world. So what happens? How is it that Avram's coming to the land, and then Yitzchak's going back to the same place that Avram was told Lech Lecha, to leave from, to go? He said, go to the land where I'm showing you. This is where you're going to become a people. So how does that go around in full circle like that? And we really understand this from the story of Rivkah. It's an amazing thing. We find that when Rivkah becomes pregnant, it says that the children were making a balagan, a commotion in her stomach, and she says, Im kain Lama Anochi. And Rashi explains, why was I, the statement doesn't make sense. The literal translation, Im kain Lama Anochi, means, if so, why am I? And Rashi says, meaning, why am I asking for children if the child seems so confused? And she has no questions. We don't know if she discussed the issue with Yitzchak, but she immediately went to ask God. She went to Shem, to the yeshiva, to her great-grandfather. She needed to understand what's going on. And what's Shem answer her? Shem says, you don't have one child, you have two children. La'oim yematz, they're always going to be struggling, and there's always going to be a battle. And she leaves that conversation. We don't find that she asks the question anymore, Lama Zainoichi, why am I? She understands from the answer. And this is something very telling about Rivkah, and this is what we see in the life of the story that we know of the life of Rivkah. This understanding of what has to be done, in continuation we spoke the past few weeks, of this clarity that we have to have. When Eliezer comes and says, go, we have to ask Rivkah if she's going to go, she's ready to go to marry Yitzchak, she says, I'm going. She had no questions. I'm going, whether you let me or you don't let me. When her children have a question, she sees confusion in her stomach, she needs to understand what to do. And it's not that the answer was necessarily so positive. She says she has two children. She has one child that's going to be going to the house of idol worship. But she had clarity now. And when it comes to the question of who gets the blessings, it was clear. She had no question. She had no doubt Yaakov needs to get the blessings. Because what Rivkah actually means, like we've talked before, means Rivkah. And Chassidus, it explains, Torah, the Alter Rebbe explains that Rivkah is the ability to connect to our emotions, not the way they're created and separated by our mind. When our mind creates our emotions are a result of our understanding. So they're separate. Either we're in a mode of kindness, or a mode of reservation, of gvura, limitations, boundaries, because our mind understands that there's certain situations how we're supposed to behave in certain situations, but it separates things. But Rivkah is Rivkah. It means to gather the animals together, a group of two or three or four animals. She has the ability to connect to the midos, to the attributes, not in the way they're separated, where there's a balance that's between, but she elevates beyond the logic. She's able to elevate to the kesser, to the desire, to the want, and there's a single guide, single purpose, single mission in life. That's what Rivkah was about. Rivkah finds out from Shem that there's confusion because there's two children. This is the same question of Tanya. Tanya starts off in the beginning of Tanya. This month, we celebrate Tanya. Lama Zanoichi, why am I? Who am I? The Tanya says, what's going on? I have two sides within me. I feel sometimes I'm being pulled towards godliness, and other times I'm really being pulled and want to go do other things. And Tanya says, because you have two souls inside of you, the same answer Shem gives. And la'oim yematz, it's always going to be a struggle, a battle. And when we hear that, we don't say, oy vey, we say, okay, this is our life, this is our mission. Now we have clarity what we have to do. We understand why we're being pulled in different directions. And we know that our avodah is to go out there and change things. And therefore, when Rivkah knows that Yitzchak wants to give a blessing, and this is a great blessing, the blessing of Yagia B'Torah, the blessing of Gevurah, this is beyond the blessing that God blesses Yitzchak. Vayivarech Hashem es Yitzchak b'noi, Elikim es Yitzchak b'noi. That God blessed Yitzchak, which would have gone anyways to Yaakov. Yaakov would have gotten the Torah anyways. But the ability to go out into the Chutz La'aretz, outside of Eretz Yisrael, the ability to go and turn the world, transform the world, not just to be an isolated Jew, but to turn the whole world, to transform the inner animal within you, the inner animal within the world. That's the blessing that Yitzchak was giving to Esav, and Rivkah said, no, Yaakov needs that blessing. And therefore, after he gets the blessing, Yitzchak goes right back to where Avram was leaving, goes back to Choron, because the end game, the end idea is the true pleasure, what Rivkah's connected to, is the desire Hashem has in transforming the world and making the entire world for a dir b'tachtonim. When Mashiach comes, all the world is going to recognize Hashem. So this is a very important parsha, when Rivkah is able to take that twist, that understanding, and take Yaakov and say, go back where your grandfather came from, and now transform that with the power that you've been empowered, with the blessing of my husband, of Yitzchak, your father. And this is how we're going to march together to the coming of Mashiach Tzidkenu, the month of Geula, when we completed that job. We've made the world, the menorah, out in public places, learning Chassidus all over the world. Yafutzim aneisecha chutzim, we merit the coming Mashiach Tzidkenu b'meher v'meinu mamish.